Ready? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. We will call to order this Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you for your patience. We typically start this meeting with a prayer reading or thought. Cody Herbst will give us our prayer, and then Richard Nielsen will lead us in the pledge.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this day. We're grateful to be gathered here today, and please us so we can resolve some issues at hand, and grateful for this beautiful country that we live in and this beautiful state, and for the freedoms that we enjoy, and grateful for our loved ones back home, and bless that everyone can travel in safety after this, and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks,
Thank
Cody.
you.
Please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. August Employee of the Month, Commissioner Gardner. You gonna
Yes.
take us away on that
I
one?
have that. So the August Employee of the Month is from the Health Department, and it is Casey Jensen. Yes. And as Casey comes up, I'm just going to mention, so as we went through and read the nomination, a couple of things are really stand out. And that's one is your attitude and just the bright light that you are, that you bring a positive attitude and a happiness and humor and good times, and that your coworkers just really love working with you. And that is so important, regardless of whatever work you're doing, anywhere, government or not. Having a coworker that brings the light and the joy and the happiness really can change the culture of an entire division, and you do a great job of that, and everyone recognizes that just your positive attitude and your bright light is really appreciated. On top of that, just your talents. You're good at your job, and your communication and graphic arts and messaging and everything that you do well. And your media skills are much needed in the department, and everyone really appreciates working with you and everything you do. And I know that we appreciate, that's one area that we as a county have not been super great at, is proactive communication with the public, and you've really helped enhance that for the health department and for the public health, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
No other long speech that you'd like to give? Okay.
We've got some
Totally
things
good,
for you.
but-
So you
I
come
mean,
up.
I could go on and talk about all the people. Like, I love to give a hard time, you know.
Yep. They're probably the ones that nominated you.
Yeah, maybe, but it's honestly like most jobs I really have just like loved in the health department is no different. Just, you know, the better you get to know people, like it just makes you love your job more, love the people that are there. So it's great. And I love public health, so it all works out.
Cool. We're going to come down and get a picture with you.
Okay, thank you.
Here's your certificate.
Should wear my tall shoes today. Thank you.
And there.
Okay. Now we have a work session item, a presentation from our USU Extension, our 4-H program. I was lucky enough to run into Mr. Dwight Lydiard on Sunday, and he said, hey, we want to come and give a report on the county fair. So some of Utah County's finest. Tell us who you are, young man.
Hi, I'm Tate Taylor. I recently graduated from Lehigh High School, and I show lambs and goats. We're here today to thank you guys for your support and funding for the Utah County Fair. We just finished up 4 great days at this show, and we believe that the livestock show is a big draw to why people come to the fair. There are always large crowds at each of our shows. I just want to share with you guys some of the statistics from our show. We had over 200 exhibitors show. We had 300 animals there. There were 10 heifers, 35 steers, 78 pigs, 126 lambs, and 55 goats. In addition, exhibitors had the opportunity to participate in livestock judging, livestock quiz bowl, and livestock knowledge bowl. And I've enjoyed being able to further my knowledge through my 8 years of showing. So yeah, and we've been able to do all these extra things under the coordination of our County 4-H coordinator, Corianne Topham. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Mr.
thank
Taylor.
you.
Your alma mater, Lehigh, being represented.
Absolutely.
Very cool. I see Miss Mendenhall coming up.
Hi, my name is Lydia Mendenhall. I'm from the Benjamin 4-H Club. I show pigs at the junior livestock shows all around the Utah State. This year at the Utah County Fair, we had a judge from Brady, Texas, that came to evaluate our livestock. We show these animals in both market and in showmanship. In market, the animal is judged on visual characteristics and showmanship, where the youth are judged on how well they show their animal. During showmanship, we show by age, and in market, we show by weight. There are winners in each division. In market, there are overall winners, and in showmanship as well. In showmanship, we also have a chance to enter our animals into the carcass contest, where our animals are used in an ultrasound and the data is judged. One of my favorite parts of the show is getting to know the other kids and making lifelong friendships and friends. And even though we're competing against each other, we all love to congratulate each other and just support each other and try to help each other in any way we can. And even though we're competitors, we are also still friends in the end, and it's very fun. So thanks for making all of the Utah County Fair happen, and thank you for supporting us.
Thanks, Lydia.
Absolutely.
It is some of the best sportsmanship that you see out there.
Hello, my name is Evie Hunter. I'm from the Timpanogos 4-H Club. I show lambs, pigs, and steers. The show is run by a group of over 50 volunteers. They give their time throughout the year to prepare to make our show a success. All the funds given to us by the county fair go back directly to the kids. These are given to us as money on the ribbons we receive when showing. This money helps me pay for projects and even save some for my future. Additional donors donate money to be able to give buckles, banners, and cash prizes to winners. We have a major sponsor, Tyson Foods, who gives us money to buy each exhibitor a hoodie. We have a hoodie for you today to show our appreciation of everything you guys do for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll make sure you get yours, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Lydia, thank you.
Yeah, we have an
We'll
information.
make sure we get
he gets
that to
his. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very well done. Anything you want to say, Dwight?
We really appreciate the support of the county commission for our livestock show. Like Evie said, 100% of the money that we receive from the county commission goes directly to kids. We get donations for any kind of other things that we need to run the show, but the money that you guys give us goes 100% to the kids. So we appreciate that, and it was one of the biggest shows we've ever had. We appreciate your support.
Yeah, well, and we also appreciate.
Yeah, go ahead. and then
Say,
I'll
well,
say-
we appreciate you, your work, and some of the other counties in the state have stopped doing county fairs because the cost was so high. But in Utah County, because so much of our fair is run by volunteers, and because those volunteers take the time to go get sponsors, we've been able to keep the cost reasonable, and we're able to continue doing that. So we are more than happy to support the fair. We're more than happy to do that work, but we want to thank you for making it possible, so that we haven't had to have that tough decision on, how do we fund this or cut it? We don't have to make that decision. We can continue supporting it because of your hard work. Thank you.
Great.
I highly suspect that my hoodie is going to be stolen within minutes of me being home by my 4-H boys.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's great. We had an amazing thing happen this year. We had a vendor that is a Utah County business that stepped forward, wanted to remain 100% anonymous. He stepped up, I get emotional, with a check for $10,000. So every kid got an additional $50 bill. So that's pretty
fantastic.
cool.
Yeah,
So cool.
absolutely. It's amazing.
Okay, thank you
I
very
echo
much.
what Amelia said. We just really, all of your volunteer hours. I know there are many people standing behind you, Dwight. So I will wear this with much pride. Thank you for this, and thank you for all you guys do.
Thanks for letting us take time.
Okay, thanks,
Absolutely.
Dwight. Thanks, kids. Yes, that does deserve applause. Thank you. Now is the moment where we will build our consent agenda. Is there anything that's currently existing of the 13 items on consent that you would like to hold or discuss?
No, I looked through all of them, all the documentation. I'm good.
Okay.
And I'm happy with what you have there. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. And then the items 1 through 8, hold 1.
Do we need to hold 2 as well? Or is that, no, I think you're good on that one, right?
I don't see that applicant. That's just moving.
Okay,
from
if
ag
they're not here,
protection.
then we're good. I'm good with just 1.
Any other items besides 1?
I didn't have any.
That's from me.
Okay. Closed? None?
I am sorry, I forgot to ask previously, we are going to request a litigation section today if you have.
Okay. That's number 12 if my eyes don't. Sorry.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, so
Do you
we will
need glasses?
strike 9, 10, and 11 and hold 12.
As far as regular agenda items, we will hold number 1. As far as closed meetings, we will strike number 9, 10, and 11 and hold number 12.
Perfect. Okay, item 1. Here we are. If we get this resolved today, we're not going to have anybody that says our opening prayer. So we might want to table this so the Herbst family has to come back and say prayers every week, but Bryce doesn't think that's very
They'll
funny.
end up like Buffton, who I called on him once and he hasn't been here at the beginning of
Yeah.
meetings since.
Yeah, that's what
He like
happens.
purposely skips the beginning of meeting in case we call on him again.
Well, I think we're getting to a good spot. So
I won't shed any tears if we get it resolved today.
okay.
Bryce Armstrong, Community Development Staff. Maybe I'll just kind of tee it up with just some a quick update of what's kind of transpired in the past week since we last met. As you hopefully are aware, staff proposed or created an amended proposal, and that was uploaded to the agenda system. It's entitled Staff Proposals or something for the 8.8, the August 7th meetings for your reference. That was forwarded to the applicant and other parties that had requested that. The applicant provided another proposal, their proposal, earlier today, and I think that's been amended or uploaded to the agenda system also. So we can definitely answer questions about staff-specific recommendations, but I thought maybe I'd start with just highlighting maybe the differences between the two. It was hope that we would find some common ground. I think we found some common ground. There are some differences that still exist, and think we're kind of to the point where it's maybe just a policy decision by the commissioners on how they want to go. The main difference is, again, we just kind of got this about an hour and a half ago, but I think I'll be able to cover the differences between the two proposals as we sit today. The first one is related to the amount of combined days for an agritourism event and a seasonal holiday event. Let me back up. So neither of the proposals have proposed to change an agritourism's duration individually. That remains at 65. I know there was some discussion about maybe changing that. Neither proposal proposes to change that. Staff proposes to have a combined total between the two of 90. The reason we stayed at 90, there were some questions about that last week. We looked at the provisions specifically for agritourism, and they're a little bit different from seasonal sales. Seasonal sales says you have a starting date and an ending date, and that's your total duration, whether you're open or not. Agritourism does not have that, so there's some built-in flexibility if you're not open on certain days of the week, or you take a break during a slow period, then you can maybe extend those days later in the year or whatever. So we felt there was enough flexibility to stay at 90. The applicant proposed 120.
And so if you're open the month of October, you take out the Sundays, my days that count are less a Sunday.
Yes.
So if it's
Sure.
anywhere between.
Yeah, so that can maybe, you can
26
piggyback those
or
days
27.
on the back end if you want to, say, hey, let's have a couple days open during Thanksgiving or whatever.
I know you threw out 120. Do you have any heartburn with 90? It doesn't seem like that was any of the really requests. I was kind of also trying to, as other festivals come along, maybe you decide to do a sunflower thing or dairy days during Christmas, and would they be required to get maybe a separate Christmas tree lot thing, or can we?
So those are specifically different temporary uses and would not be subject to this this combination. It's just the two, the seasonal event, which potentially could be a sunflower thing, but we have 7 or 8 different seasonal or temporary uses that would not be subject to that.
That would not be subject to
Right.
this.
So
Okay. In that case, I'm fine with 90. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't cutting off, if it was a matter of a dozen days, I didn't want that to significantly affect their business. But if those other ones potentially could be outside of the 90, then I'm fine with 90.
And 4 months is a lot.
for clarity, and so say someone's having an agritourism event, and then they want to also, and they have it for 65 days, which is the limit individually, and then they want to have a Christmas tree lot in December for whatever amount, then they would be subject to those requirements independent of any agritourism utilization. So
Okay,
It would be a
but
whole
those
other
wouldn't count
days.
towards their 90 days or whatever.
correct.
Yeah, that's when I heard you say that. Then
Yeah.
Then I'm
Guess-
fine with that.
Okay. So
90's probably good.
anyway, I'll let the staff kind of speak to the applicant speak to theirs. So that was kind of the one change. Another change revolved around amusement rides. Staff's proposal kept the prohibition of amusement rides as a permanent structure, and then applicants just took that out completely. I know last meeting it was contemplated that the middle ground was like, well, they can only be operated during the event. And I think that's already contemplated in the ordinance. Really, it's just so hard to kind of differentiate what kind of rides there are which, and so we just felt where there is a codified definition that might be a good way to a good place to land as far as staff's perspective. There are a number of exemptions that are spelled out, and have those exemptions here. We can share if needed, but that's kind of where we're at. I think just staff was continued that prohibition, and the applicant proposed to pull that out. I can kind of go through all of these, then we can discuss, or you can stop me.
Then that backs you up a little bit because I'm seeing there's adding item 8 to the first section of amusement rides.
Yeah, so I think there's clarifying that amusement rides are allowed.
That they are. And you're comfortable with that?
No, I think staff kind of stayed where that's where we would draw. As a staff's proposal would still allow amusement rides, but not with permanent structures. And I think the applicant's proposal just has it, whether they're permanent or temporary, there's allowed.
And then I think
It just
you
can't be
referenced-
used not during their time.
Yeah, and I think that the ordinance kind of contemplates that.
Oh,
Okay.
Current
gotcha.
ordinance, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that might get us to where we need to get then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think staff just stay the same. It just feels like that those shouldn't be allowed as permit rides. The next difference, and it's a little more complex, but it's storage. I think staff's recent proposals allowed for on-site storage, provided it was in a building or in an area that was enclosed by side obscuring fence. We've amended that to not require any type of side obscure fence. Limit it to a size, a percentage of the activity area in a distance from existing homes. So basically it said you can store it on site without screening it as long as your storage area is a certain percentage of your activity area and you're a certain distance from the existing buildings. So, and then with that, we had some additions to our site plan requirements to have the applicant indicate where their storage areas are and what those dimensions are, so we can calculate that. We landed on 5% of a storage area of the activity area. Again, this is going to be applied for anyone who utilizes this countywide. The applicant, from our staff's best estimation, had 50-something acres of activity area, just kind of a rough measurement. But at 5%, I think that gave them about 2.5 acres worth of storage area. So anyway, and the applicant's proposal really doesn't require a limit as far as how big of area it is, just would allow those to stay in place unless if they're temporary. So I'll let them kind of speak to that. But that's kind of the main difference of those. Staff's proposal included a traffic estimate requirement that was kind of contemplated last time. Before it was a traffic study, if you recall. We worked with the county engineer's office to get some language. There's a threshold that needs to be exceeded for it. If we didn't want everyone to have to do a traffic estimate, the thresholds were based on size and the amount of permanent structures. Once you triggered those thresholds, then a traffic estimate would be required, which obviously could be prepared by the applicant.
I didn't see those. What does trigger that?
So if you look at staff's most recent August 7th proposal, we're down under subsection
M5.
5. It says a traffic count estimate shall be required for any agritourism event permit which exceeds 25 acres. Again, this is only related to permanent structures. 25 acres in total area for all activity areas, including parking areas, as shown on the approved site plan, and includes permanent structures with a total combined footprint of more than 5,000 square feet. And then it lists what should be included in the estimate. And we got that language from Richard and his team. For context, there was a provision put in there that if the average daily traffic estimate exceeds 1,000 cars per day, that would trigger a traffic study, a little more detail. The roads out in the subject or the area that the applicant is in those volumes are 200 to 300 vehicles a day. So it'd be a significant increase required before a study was required. So staff put that in, changed it from a study to estimate. The applicant doesn't have any requirements for any type of traffic study or estimate. So that's another difference.
The difference being the study has to be done by an engineer, the estimate can be done by the applicant.
Yes.
Just to show that they're thinking through it. Okay.
Yep. And then the height requirement, staff has a height limit for permanent structures of 20 feet. Applicant removed that height limit from their proposal. I think those are the main differences. So. Well, I guess the other item that the applicants included was, I think last week there was reference to the existing ordinance that said, hey, you had 5 complaints. Your next event, you got to take it to the commission for approval. There was maybe an appetite expressed to remove that, and the applicant's version removed that. So.
And you're okay with that too?
Yeah, I wouldn't lose any sleep over that.
And then, there was one more on here. It seemed like there was some conversation of, if we were going to talk the train, having something of verbiage saying we're not using certain things outside of the days. that conversation? Was that addressed anywhere?
No, I think that's already contemplated in the proposal.
So
Well,
as
I
long
guess
as
The difference would be
technically,
that's why I specifically asked the question about amusement rides, because I think under the definition that they have of amusement rides, that's counting as an amusement ride, and because the tracks are permanent, even though the train itself is moved, they're counting that as permanent. So that's kind of where we need to come up with a reconciliation.
yeah, and to address that specific issue, again, this would be for anyone. Staff put in a provision under our storage proposal that would state that structures which require location on the ground with a height less than 3 feet are not subject to the on-site storage area requirements specified in this section.
Okay,
So that
so they wouldn't have
wouldn't
to move.
count as your 5% or whatever if area that's allotted to storage. Whether it's tracks, it's some little decoration that's less than 3 feet, and you just leave it out there year round because you like the looks of it, and it doesn't require a permit. We wouldn't. That would be
So the
exempt.
tracks wouldn't have to come up.
No,
Okay.
not under staff's proposal.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think that covers most of the main differences.
Okay.
I'll kind of let the applicant give their version, but
Yeah, and I don't know if Dale or you were going to talk about, I think there was some conversation yesterday about what the original intent was here. We went to the Planning Commission, and you keep, addressing them as the applicant because they have made application, right? And so if there is any other things that maybe, as I see Rex Larson in the back, like that they would like changed different than this, right? Then they would make application. We've tried to include them, but maybe just a report on any conversations or things with some of other.
sure. So we sent the proposal to Mr. Larson at the request of the last meeting. Staff had not received any direct feedback. I know that maybe he's reached out to other members of the county to express, but to your first point, this is an application presented by a property owner and applicant. I guess if there was a change that was suggested by another party that the commission felt satisfied, well, obviously it's the commission's decision, but perhaps they could say, hey, would the applicant be amenable to including this? I think there's probably some allowance to include that. But the best practice, if it really starts changing things that weren't originally contemplated, then maybe a separate application could be conducted. But if it's something simple, I'd rather do it now than have to run through it again. So
Yeah, good point. Good
I
point.
agree.
Did I say that kind of correctly, or did I leave anything out? Okay.
more importantly, did I say it correctly?
The guy that'll put me in jail if I do. The attorneys.
So yeah, I don't know if there were any. I know.
You just got to
there-
approach it differently with the attorneys. I see that what they tell me is recommendations.
Oh, smart. I'll stay out of jail. I'd do that then.
And their risk tolerance tends to be lower than mine.
Okay, fair enough.
So I don't know if there were any additional concerns by outside parties that we want to address now, or kind of let those come out.
I think I had spoke about distance with other parties, distance. I mean, in the case of some, they already have neighbors that are within the 750 proposed staff. I was comfortable with 500 feet being lowering that to 500. But I know, like the existing ones, they get permission from neighbors if needed, like in the case of Gordo's.
Okay.
Like they receive that written.
Right, that's built into the current ordinance.
And I'm fine with the 500.
Okay, and so I know I had.
So for clarification,
Section E.
yeah, for clarification,
12E.
the current ordinance, the existing ordinance says agritourism event, whether you have structures or not, you have to be 500 feet from an existing dwelling that's not in your ownership or on your property, or you have an exception to get a letter saying we're good. Staff put in a 750 requirement for the storage areas only.
Oh, for the
So-
storage area.
right.
So 750 was the storage
Yeah,
area.
we're not changing the original 500. So if you want that to sync up, the thinking is the event is 65 days or whatever.
Yeah.
The storage
Whereas the
area
storage
is
is like
365 days. So maybe a little extra buffer might be helpful, but if you guys want to keep it right at 500 uniform, that's fine.
I'm fine with the 750 for the storage.
I think the other issue related to that was brought up was
Fine.
would have someone comes in and builds a new house
Oh, sorry, yeah.
before the
Still
next
on that.
event. Again, existing contemplates it's there before your event, but where these are renewable each year, there is a concern that all of a sudden someone comes in between events or whatever, and now they're a new existing dwelling within our 500 feet where we've always done it. How do we handle that? Which is a legitimate concern. I think I've mentioned previously, staff is looking at all of these temporary uses, and we kind of felt that that area needed help. And so there's some language we can maybe add to address that, to prevent someone from kind of being hijacked by someone who moves in during their after they've been established for 5 years and now there's an existing dwelling and technically it's a problem. So let me just read you that language for the record if we want to incorporate that or not. This would be placed, I guess it would be up on our existing language that subsection E. There's 3 kind of exceptions to the 500-foot rule. This would be a 4th. And it would state that the existing dwelling or dwellings was or were constructed after an agritourism event that received an approved temporary use permit for agritourism within the previous 2 years. So basically, as long as someone's been doing a regular event the last couple of years, someone comes in after they originally established, they wouldn't be subject to that 500-foot rule, if that makes sense.
I like it. I like that a lot. If you build a large townhome complex next to the facility and there wasn't that 500-foot buffer, if that gives them cover,
Yeah.
if I'm
Yes,
hearing
that's the
correctly.
intent. That's the
you know,
intent.
If they've been in place for 2 years.
I like that as well.
The time, 8 a.m. Did staff land back?
So yeah,
on-
so the original proposal was, or the current ordinance is 10 to 10 Sunday through Thursday and 10 to 11 on Fridays and Saturdays. The applicant, in our kind of first round at this, said, hey, we've got school groups that come in early because of their schedule, and we'd like to be able to start at 8. So staff's last version includes a provision that allows them Monday through Fridays to commence at 8. Provided it's activities associated with a school, and that's a defined term. It's usually a public school. That I know that applicants isn't that restrictive. It just basically opens it up to 8 o'clock for whoever, I think, as I understand it. And the ending time on both proposals is 10 o'clock on weekdays and 11 o'clock on the weekend.
Okay, what else have you? As far as the traffic thing, sorry to belabor that one, but if their footprint is more than 5,000 square feet, is what you're saying, that's what triggers.
No, a combination of 2 things.
25 acres
Number
or-
one, they're not their property or parcel size. Their areas that are dedicated to the event is greater than 25 acres, and that they'll represent that on their application. And they have permanent structures with a cumulative footprint of more than 5,000 square feet. We don't want to have someone who wants just one or a couple small permanent buildings to have to trigger that, because we don't think the intensity justifies that, if that makes sense. We're just trying to find something that kind of equates to maybe size of use or intensity of use, basically. So those 2 thresholds would need to be, both of them would need to be met for the traffic estimate requirement to kick in.
Okay.
And even that, it only kicks in the requirement for an estimate unless there's issues.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very reasonable.
And are you comfortable if we went to 10% storage versus 5%?
Yeah, it's
I'm fine with that.
comfortable enough to get it done today.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's a huge concern. We always kind of start conservatively. You know, it's easier to go one direction versus the other if it's a problem. But yeah, I don't think 10%'s overly burdensome.
Okay.
So in the situation of the applicant, if they had an activity area of 50 acres or plus or minus, instead of having the 2.5 acres, they'd have 5 acres that would allow them to have structures that aren't permanent and issued a permit just to stay out in the open as a storage area. So, I think people can be flexible in how they design their activity areas to not have to move things.
As I follow this, as we go down these red lines, the only thing that we've really changed so far is 5% to 10% for that.
We talked about it, but didn't change the time.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm fine with the 8 a.m.
time, and then
School.
or striking the five complaints.
Yeah, I agree with striking that.
On the time, I just want clarification so I'm clear. Would it just be 8 o'clock every day
Almost
and not worry about the school connection?
That's what I'm inclined to do,
and that's
because
what
then I
I'm
don't have to
inclined to do as
define
well.
a school group.
I mean, if we looked at like sound ordinances, there's no difference in that. Like sound ordinances don't start at 10 a.m., so why would this?
So 8 o'clock Monday, any day of the week,
It's both of those
regardless.
10 a.m.
If you
start
want
at
to
8.
have any
Yeah,
group
just have-
come,
Yeah.
Okay.
And then end at 10 on weeknights and 11 on weekends. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
And then I think, well, I guess we'll hear from the applicant as to where we're apart, but I think we might maybe have some back and forth on the traffic. I expressed last week that I hate anybody to have to spend a lot of money on a traffic study, and so
Yes, we changed that to a plan, basically. What did you call it? A
estimate.
estimate.
but I
estimate.
like you having a fallback for a larger,
Yeah.
right? A larger, like if somebody tried to, that really was warranted, that would give you some
agree.
fallback. I just don't know if 25 acres.
It also requires them to think through it, so they probably won't need a study. Because if they think through it and proactively work on that and submit a plan to us, then they're more likely to do it and they won't need the study.
Yeah, how'd you get to 25 acres? Sorry, just any.
Not too. We looked at what our existing operations were, and kind of looked at a threshold, and there's a clear outlier of size between what we have existing, and so we didn't want to capture the smaller events that just maybe don't have the number of patrons that a larger event would be, and so 25 kind of delineated the two.
Okay. And then lastly, I know you and I had a conversation about your conversations with the other counties that Farm Bureau recommended we be more like. Do you want to? You've reached back out to them as well.
We have. We
So
reached out
appreciate
again.
you doing
We
that.
actually had some of our staff call them, so we were making sure, because we looked at their ordinance, how ordinances can be, and most of them, are pretty generic in how they approach these. And so, yeah, it was hard to find a lot of definitive standards on lengths and structures and all that. So
Okay.
wasn't super helpful for this exercise, but
Okay. Perfect. So, I think to reiterate my point from earlier, if there were something that Rex also wanted, would he have? I know this is Cornbelly's application, and so in lieu of getting anything fixed today, that he didn't have to make application. What are the recommendations? I can't remember how you stated it. You didn't want.
I'll start and I'll let Dale come up and correct me. But again, this is your meeting and this is not a public hearing, so there is no requirement to have public input. But if you feel like you want someone to maybe the best approach would be if that was the direction you want to go, let them state it kind of in the public setting, and then let that be considered by different parties. And if it's something that's like, oh, that's simple and that makes sense, then I would think it would make sense to include that today. Oh, I don't think I said it right.
And I understand, but Dale Air County Attorney's Office. I understand what Bryce is saying. He wants to get all this done, but I also want to respect the applicant's rights. It's their application. They have a right to be heard, a right to be ruled upon, a right to get their ordinance if they're going to get it so they can go on. If they want to include any kind of changes, they're the right ones to ask. Because if the change is too substantial or significant, it really needs to go back to the Planning Commission and have it reviewed and recommended there. So I think what I would rather do is hear from the applicant. If they want to continue this process and maybe get kicked out another 2 weeks or a month, it's up to them. But I don't think they should be forced to do that.
Yeah. But
Understood.
if they have a friendly amendment they're willing to accept.
Friendly amendments are just that friendly, so.
Okay.
we won't get sued for friendly amendments.
I think based upon conversations we've had, this, the favorable amendments hopefully are helpful to all, any and all. So,
And that was my intent, is that all parties included the applicant. So,
and
the-
talking with the applicant, it was made very clear that they want everybody to be successful.
Sure.
And I don't want to put,
This specific question's come up before, and so when we advertise the public hearing at the planning commission level, when we indicate what's being changed, we also say any other applicable section that may be related to the change to cover maybe some of these changes that come through discussion that weren't contemplated in the original. So,
but making changes to like time and things like that, they're just improvements, right? I mean,
yeah, I would think
go
that
back
was
to the planning commission would be,
sure. I think that would be contemplated in
Extra
what
step.
was originally advertised. But if we all of a sudden get way out of in left field on a totally different topic, then I think it's probably appropriate to have that kicked back to a public hearing. So,
okay. Well, who from the applicant, Brady?
All right. First of all, I want to thank staff. We've had a good conversation. I think they're sick of me, but Bryce and Dale and Greg and Kurt, they've all been good to work with, and they've been patient and really professional and great. And I want to thank all three of the commissioners for their time that they've spent on this. I know that it's taken a good amount of time. In terms of, there's a lot of areas where we have found good common ground. And I'm going to, would it be all right if I gave you guys a couple of papers?
Yeah. Is it what was uploaded today?
Yeah.
Okay, so Commissioner Sakovic, it should be attached to the agenda.
It should be attached. In the first page, I've tried to show track changes, although I'll note a couple of places where I goofed up and I deleted some of the traffic stuff, so it's not crossed out here on the traffic stuff and on the building height. And then the back one is just a clean version. So front and back on the first is a track changes, substantially track changes. There's a couple of things, and then the back one is a clean version. So the first change is on item 12B8, and we just added amusement rides to be clear. And then if you go to the next page, which is on the back of that first page, you've got the 8 a.m. time periods. I think we're generally in agreement there. Some of the reasons why that, rather than just have it be school groups, which are defined as public school, we have micro schools for homeschooling, we have private schools. There's a lot of different groups. Daycare groups bring kids.
So we were good with that.
And so I think that we're all in agreement on that. We agreed on all the lighting issues. That's from the county side as well. I think we're all in agreement on the language there, I and J. And then M is where a lot of the difficulties are. We had some language about trying to put some language around permanent structure versus temporary structure. And there is some consternation and just nervousness because we haven't received guidance as to what they believe is a temporary or permanent structure under the building code. And so we're kind of being told by staff, we'll be reasonable, we'll make this work. And so we don't necessarily have to adopt what is in our proposal. We're fine with the staff version on the representation that will be taken care of and we can work with them in a reasonable way. But that is one area where we get nervous because we don't think that the interpretations of our view of what is temporary and permanent is perhaps not as clear as, we don't believe that it is as clear as they believe it is under the building code. And so, but I think we're okay with living in that world of what we view as ambiguity and they view as certainty. We're okay deferring on that. And then that's where and then we get down to items, I think it was 5 through 8, essentially on the staff's version that we pulled out. So it's not on this track changes version, and that deals with the traffic study. I don't know that too many people were asking for traffic estimates and traffic studies related to agritourism coming in. We as the applicant certainly never did. We're a little worried about that. One compromise that I think may be reasonable is if you go back to the first page on D, it has certain things that the applicant submits as part of their site plan. You could add at the bottom of that as a traffic estimate, and that would provide at least that thoughtfulness coming in. But we do have some concerns that I don't know that size is the differentiating factor between traffic study or not. It is the amount of people that come. And you can have a smaller area with a lot of people, or you can have a larger area with very few. And so the traffic study, tying it to just pure size, may not be the right way to do it. But, I think that we've always had some concerns on just now we're into another regulatory environment of traffic studies that we do have some concerns on. And so, I don't know how big of a problem traffic has been. There's always a higher burden on the streets around these. But then what if you do have a traffic issue? Does that mean that agritourism no longer happens in rural areas that have a high draw? Like, are we putting a cap on the success of an agritourism operation? And is it about traffic or is it about parking? So, if they can bring the traffic in and people are willing to wait in the lines to get there, I know it burdens the areas around, but what you're really trying to do is make sure they pull the parking into their spot and it's not on the streets and creating havoc that way. Otherwise, you're talking about, well, what are you going to require them to do to mitigate traffic? Are they going to be tasked with building paying for the building of new lanes with temporary traffic lights, with temporary signage, with, all of that stuff? Is that something that we want to start contemplating? And so that part goes into a new area that we weren't really trying to get into as the applicant. And it does give us some concern on traffic. But we do think a traffic estimate is probably okay. It's just most people applying are not going to know how to do a traffic estimate. And is it per day traffic? Is it, it's a little rough.
I still like that idea of the fallback when something's large,
Yeah.
but I don't know that 25 acres, so I appreciate staff going kind of down a road that if it gets really big, then of course there's something that has to trigger that traffic study.
Yeah, and staff's recommendation is not without reason. Like there's some reasoning there and a good thing. I worry that if we start creating that regulatory scheme, before it's become something that is significantly complained about and everything, now we're in that mode of here's another thing on top of other things. So it is a policy call that I think is fair on both sides.
I'm thinking of the dance studio maybe down the street, right? And it's like, man, the city allowed them to have a dance studio in their basement, but every hour from 3:30 until 8 at night, there's 30 cars that come to that street, right? And so it's, so maybe time, I see where you're going, like time or attendees. I mean, I don't know the acreage.
What do we require
acreage is
for
right.
the Color Festival?
Here comes Richard's our public works engineer.
Because that's a traffic nightmare.
Richard Nelson, Public Works Director. That goes into an event permit and the mass gathering permit. Most of the traffic side of that, because of the impact on SR 198, goes through UDOT. So we don't
Does
get
the
involved.
temporary permit require?
Correct. Yeah, they do have to have that. They do have to have parking. We do have them show us what kind of volume they're looking at. It does impact some county roads that are adjacent to the site there where they have the Color Festival, mainly with parking rather than in and out volume like they have on the state road.
Okay. So for mass gathering permits, we do require some sort of.
Correct. Yep.
And is that like a stamped engineered document, or it's, hey, this is what we're doing?
I honestly don't know what level that UDOT's looking for on that. I have not been involved directly with that.
Okay.
So I couldn't answer that for you.
Gotcha.
Can I ask one question? How do they define mass gathering for purposes of having to provide that?
I believe it's over 1,000 people, if I remember right.
Which on ours requires over 1,000 vehicles, so it would even be bigger than that. So I think
Yes.
it's comparable. to what
Yeah,
we're already doing then.
But yeah, but it's a large number of people. I think it's 1,000 people over like a 2-hour period, if I remember correctly.
And ours requires 1,000 vehicles, which, I mean, we got minivans. They carry more than one person, right?
So many minivans.
So I think it is comparable to what we're already doing for.
Yeah, and so if it were something that instead of tied to just acreage, we're tied to the usage, like that mass event within, this many vehicles within this amount of time. If you think that you'll exceed it, then you need to do this. I think that that's probably a little better metric, and it would follow that path, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then on the storage, I think my clients could. Well, we did remove the building height issue, mostly because I'm not sure why 20 feet is the height. I think if you're going to do it, just say within the underlying use, what is the building height allowance, and go with that if you're going to do a height restriction. But I'm not sure that
Are those for temporary usage? For permanent usage, they would go with building codes, right?
Yeah, but for temporary uses, I think it would just be something that they would be applying for, whether it's I don't know that we haven't been asking for a height restriction. I don't know that it's a problem, and so I'm not sure why that's in there. If it went forward with the 20, I don't think it's a problem for my client. But yeah, if it went forward with the 20, it's not the end of the world for my client. But I'm not sure that whether that's the right number or if you want that.
I'm just trying to, it's two stories. I'm trying to figure out which temporary structure is going to be. I mean, if it's more than 2 stories high.
Things that you could have, there's things that you put up that, they tip up and they have a drop for more than 2 stories. Or if you were to have there are some bungee type things where, they could put, go higher than that. But I don't think it's as common in these. But if you're playing what if, there
like
are
a rock
a few
climbing
things.
wall, like a temporary rock climbing wall
could be up
something.
above that. And so I'm not sure. I pulled it out, not because I have a real issue with it on behalf of my client, but because I'm not sure that you want to be so restrictive in that where it hasn't been a problem yet on a temporary basis. And then the storage, the way that we modified is I still have some heartburn with saying when you get a temporary permit, you lose your ability to store stuff on your property if you use it as part of the permit. And so what we have is that it just has to be stored in accordance with the underlying land use. And that's it. You have the same rights that you had before you applied for a temporary permit. And you can keep your stuff on the property if it's allowed on the property, and you can remove it if it's not. And that seems a much cleaner way. If they did have to do this percentage of that, then I think 10% would make more sense. But overall, I don't know why we're changing the storage for the underlying use on the property because they applied for a temporary permit. That doesn't make sense to me. You shouldn't lose property rights by applying for a temporary permit to do something. And so that's, if you could store something in the corner of your lot, you should still be able to store something in the corner of your lot. And so that's kind of the way that I've viewed that issue.
Well, now you're thinking like a lawyer and not like a bureaucrat.
Most lawyers kind of think like bureaucrats, so there's a lot of weird things about lawyers. Paul knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. But that's kind of the reasoning behind it. Nothing that staff has is unreasonable. Those are just the suggestions for trying to keep this simple and allowing for the agritourism to go forward without kind of getting lost in these are the scenarios that we potentially could worry about somehow. And I don't know that anyone's worrying about them yet. And that's the concern that I have on the ordinance. So.
And at the 25 acres in the traffic study section, the way staff has it written, would that trigger you
I think it
to
would.
reply that?
I think it would.
Okay.
And so I think if you tie it, and even the mass gathering may
trigger something as well. I haven't looked at their traffic
Mass
counts.
gathering would.
But I think that makes more sense to have, if you anticipate, at the high point, more than this many visitors, then you need to do a traffic estimate and potentially trigger traffic study. I get that. But if it's just, you're this big,
So
you're going to have a sunflower field
Yeah.
or an apple growing.
I mean, and I can see this, that area does make sense to me. When we talk about the estimated seasonal average of the daily traffic volumes exceeding 1,000 vehicles requires a traffic study from an engineer, that makes sense. But then for the estimate, I wonder if we couldn't put the estimate, instead of at 25 acres, if we put it at 200 vehicles a day or something like that, where it uses the same metric, just a different threshold for the, what do they call it? The traffic estimate rather than a traffic study.
Yeah, something.
I would rather
something
do it
along
like
those lines.
200 vehicles a day or something.
So, what were you
Yeah,
saying,
I was just going to back up that argument. For example, we have 2 8-acre fields we use for parking, but we rotate them just to minimize dust and to keep production agriculture. But that's 16 acres that almost already puts you at that threshold, just because we're trying to mitigate traffic and dust and just make it more of a pleasant country experience. So just because you have more acres doesn't mean you're going to be more negligent on the other side. So I like that metric.
And
You're saying about
your average Monday through Thursday can be much lower through the work week, Fridays and Saturdays.
Right, so it
are
would be
heavy.
crazy for you to have to require certain things Monday through Thursday, then obviously you're gonna need them on Friday and Saturday. I'd feel more comfortable instead of 25 acres total area if it was like 200 cars a day. So like on days that you're gonna exceed 200 cars, we require an estimate. And if you think you're going to exceed 1,000 cars, we need a study from an engineer. And I think that makes sense.
I don't know if do you have any other questions or concerns on this?
Right now,
I'll
we
stick
might.
around.
Looks like Bryce is gonna.
Yeah, I would love staff thoughts on that.
Okay, we'll tag team this just a little bit. I think we're okay doing the volume estimate. That was kind of the basis that we came up with, the look at this of where we needed the study and that. For me, it's not so much on the parking as it is on the roads getting to and from the site.
Yeah.
And that's where it does become a volume issue of, can the road handle it? And it may be something like, I'll use Mr. Herp's site there as an example. Maybe you bring him in on 5600 South, but you take him out on 6000.
Right.
So that you split that traffic so that the volume on any one road is lower than what that threshold is. That may be something that looking at those estimates, you can say, well, if we route the traffic in and out this way, we don't have to do any improvements. If we try to take everybody in and out on the same road, maybe that gets to the point that because of the volume, we need to do some intersection improvements or, add some shouldering or something like that to make it feasible and safe. So that's kind of where we're looking at.
Would 200 cars a day be a decent amount? Or for an estimate, or you want it
The
100?
average out on those roads currently is about 200. So that would be basically doubling the traffic on those roads at 200. So that's probably a reasonable number.
So what if we changed 25 acres to 200 cars per day? We need a study at that point.
For clarity, 200 additional cars beyond the existing
200
count?
additional cars per day for the event. Would that work? Any objection there?
Say that again.
And that would require, what would
An
that?
estimate. That would just require an estimate that you could prepare yourself.
Oh,
so that we can
absolutely.
see how you're planning on handling doubling the
We'd
traffic on that
want to do
road.
that anyway.
Yeah.
If it was ever asked, why would we not want to do
Right.
that? You know what I mean?
Okay.
But then it wouldn't trigger a study until it was 1,000
Correct.
additional cars
Additional cars a day.
a day.
Yep. Okay, let's do that. And then it keeps, to Representative Brammer's point, it keeps the consistency in the code. I like that. Okay.
Not
Do you have
to,
any issues with that, Commissioner?
No.
mine's on a different issue, or not an
Perfect.
issue, but
Okay,
just
but you're okay with that too? Okay, let's do that.
clarification on the 20 feet. That was based on a size of a two-story home. You were correct. We have done that for other types of uses in the RA5 zone, like a water tank. But this is only for permanent structures.
Well, that's only for permanent structures, so not temporary structures.
Yes.
Okay, but temporary structures could be higher if it was like a rock wall, or a bungee thing.
Right.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Anything permanent, then they would need regular permitting because it goes with the zoning code for permanent. Okay.
So then does striking it fix the,
No,
why would it?
I think just leave it the way it is because right now it's under the provision for allowing permanent
Understood.
structures.
Okay, but
Yeah. And the other thing I might mention is on the storage reasoning. I think it was brought up that, hey, why not just keep what's allowed for the underlying zone? I guess staff's thinking there is this is an actual much more intense use that's not generally allowed in the RA5 zone. So that's why
Because there'd be a special use for that zone.
there's a little different standard because this is a use that's, not just your typical residential agricultural use. This is a more intense commercial use. So that's why the standard's a little bit different than everyone else out there for that. So that was the reasoning on that.
I think if you're good with the 10%, I mean,
Yeah, sure, that'll work.
it's kind of, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Did you have something you wanted to say about?
Anything else we were
temporary structures?
apart on? From your behalf? I'm sorry, Bryce, to make you walk back.
I guess I'm not clear where we landed.
I want
on-
to make sure that we were okay with the hours, the 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out.
And I want to make sure that, like, I think you were very clear about someone moving in next door, that if you had been in operation for 2 years, that's taken care of.
So I read some language that would be incorporated within if you guys want to go that route, the right route.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just to be clear, the applicant is okay to add that to that.
Oh,
In
It's a
behalf
friendly
of other
amendment.
operators.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess the one thing I'm still unsure of where we landed was relative to amusement rides. And so I guess that's just like we
putting
said,
that-
that's a policy decision.
Putting that back in.
I'm fine putting that in.
And
I
you-
hear that it affects more than just Corn Bellies. I hear Gordo's has one too.
Who told you that? Don't neck at me.
So meaning, putting it back in, meaning like this, the county says you can't have, or the staff's proposal says no permanent structures shall be amusement rides as defined by state code.
Well, I would say, but anything under the permanent can't be, it would have to stay under 3 feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like that in this situation, that would allow the tracks to stay. But
Yes.
What we're saying
So we're
is-
fine with amusement rides as long as they're not permanent
Yes.
above 3 feet.
Yes.
I'm okay with
I guess that's a way to say it.
The roller coaster at Gordo's doesn't qualify because it's man-powered.
Right. There's just some
According to state
There's some
code.
exceptions there
Oh,
that I think
It's not a amusement ride.
and you can tell there's some
because of-
Because it's
specific
pedal-powered.
Pedal-powered, apparently.
there's some specific exceptions that are I think to address agri-tainment, the barrel rides and the animal rides. So okay, that's the only question I guess I had was where we land on that.
Okay.
Commissioner Sakovic.
Nothing more to add. This has been very thorough. Thanks.
We were hoping that you would make a recommendation with all the changes that we discussed. You got them all written down? I'm teasing you. Sorry. That wasn't very nice because I'm
I
going
know,
to
I'm
make
gonna
Amelia
make
do
this,
it.
I'm getting ready to
I'm gonna
make this
her do it.
motion, and I'm looking at this saying, okay. Okay. I'm looking at, for reference, I'm looking at the staff proposed changes to section 8.16 for August 7th from the agenda. And I'm going to take that as my starting point. And as I go through this to make this motion, I fully expect people to correct me if and when I'm wrong.
Okay.
But we can get this right. Okay? So we're going to follow this. I will make a motion to approve item number 1 on the regular agenda based off of the proposed changes to the staff recommendations with the following changes.
Add amusement rides,
Add amusement rides,
section B.
the section B. Looking for here, we're good with the 90 days, we're good
So-
with activities. Changing the times allowed to 8 a.m. across the board.
Okay.
So not number 3, so strike number 3 from H and change on items 1 and 2, change that to 8 a.m. Where's the storage? Under the traffic, under M5, change that they will need an estimate if the increase is greater than 200 cars per day. Everything else is fine in there. Looking under the storage area on N, we would like to change that to 10%. We're going to strike section O completely. And where are we adding the 2 years?
And you're gonna,
The
underneath the 10%, you're gonna go 500 feet?
Yes, and under the 10%, 500 feet.
Even though as we addressed the 2-year
Yeah.
rule. Okay.
And where's the 2 year? Are we making, is that in here or is that a different section? Would that be a section you add?
The existing dwelling language that I read in?
No, the
The 2 year rule, yeah, because it would be the 2 year rule.
For a new dwelling, correct?
new or struct, like if a townhome goes next to.
Right. That would be in under the existing requirement under E, 12E. That would be a number 4.
And adding in E, a number 4.
With
And-
Bryce's aforementioned.
Yeah, my language. The other thing I would add to that is it says no portion of the agritourism or its related activities, including storage areas. And then we could take out that 750 if you wanted those to be same. But if you want to leave the 750 in, then we'll just leave that alone. That makes sense. Did I muddy the waters? I think I muddied the waters there.
Will you tell me that one more time?
So,
We're talking about under section N.
Yeah.
right?
N, you feel like it's addressed somewhere else so that the.
No, so and we are going to keep the 750 feet.
Oh, knowing that what you're adding into.
Section,
Yeah, we need to
Section
reference that then from
E.
any. Yeah, we need to include that same language there then, I think. Or,
yes, so that what we added to section E, we want to add to section N as well.
if you want to keep this, you want to keep the 750 to be different for the storage areas. That's the question.
I'm fine just making it
500,
500.
okay.
I'm good with that too.
That'd be
That's
cleaner.
what I have written
That way
down
we
here on
can,
my-
that way we can.
And I
just-
would still add that language that if someone else builds a building, it doesn't
Yes.
affect it.
Yes, so
Okay.
that way we could just add it up back in, where was I? E, it would be a new number 4.
Yeah. E section 4, we'll add in there.
That language that was, I can read it again. The existing dwelling was constructed after an agritourism event that received an approved temporary use permit for agritourism within the previous 2 years.
Correct.
The other addition we would add to E would say right now it says no portion of the agritourism or its related activities. And I would just state that we add including storage areas.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
And then we don't have to add it to section M. Yeah, that works.
Were you
Did I
done?
miss anything on my motion that I'm making before I close this motion?
I don't have anything on my notes.
Yeah, I think she.
That's,
oh.
the 1,000 is still in there for the study. It stayed. I just changed it to 200 for the estimate.
The other language on that.
What we discussed, instead of rather be vehicles, it would be an increase of average daily traffic?
Yep. There would
Yeah.
it'd have an average daily traffic increase of 200 vehicles or more.
Yes.
The average.
That's what
were
I meant.
right in there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Richard.
As so moved. Okay,
And so second. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everybody's help on that.
I want to commend everybody, the applicant, the agritourism community, their attorneys, our staff, everybody. Thank you for coming together and working through this. I know it took a little bit longer, but this is a permanent solution which will help everyone. So I appreciate everyone's efforts on that.
All right. Before we go into closed session, we will have some time for public comment. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into closed session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.